Welcome back. We continue our conversation now with Republican Ron DeSantis and are joined by his running mate, Miami State Representative Jeanette Nunez. Now, under Rick Scott, the role of the lieutenant governor was to be neither seen nor heard. So I started by asking Nunez why she wanted to be lieutenant governor.
Well, certainly when Ron asked me to serve as his lieutenant governor, the prospect of what I could do for the state, given my background, given my record, I thought it would be a really unique opportunity to bring my skill sets to the team. And I was honored that he would think of me in that light, and certainly I'm excited about the prospect of moving forward in this election.
Why'd you select her?
Well, she, I think, is just a phenomenal candidate. I mean, you know, she's a mother of three. She's highly educated, highly successful in her non-political life, and then she's been a very, very effective legislator in Tallahassee, and so she really knows how to get things done. And so I want a lieutenant governor, obviously, who could be governor, but it's going to help us get things done as in an administration. And I think she's somebody, she'll be the highest-ranking female Hispanic in Florida history, which I think is great. We were just at FIU. She'll be the highest-ranking FIU graduate in Florida government history. So it's a really, really good selection. I think she's going to do a great job. I want
to go back to the issue of Puerto Rico for a second, because I think there's an interesting overlap here between the two of you. And the question I want to ask you, Congressman, was, did Congress make a mistake not impaneling some sort of bipartisan commission to look at what happened in Puerto Rico, much the same way that the Congress back in when Katrina hit, the Republican Congress went ahead and put together a group to examine the failures of Katrina, even though it was a Republican president at the time?
Well, interestingly enough, Jim, I actually did an oversight hearing on the Puerto Rican response. I was the chairman of the subcommittee on national security, which had oversight over FEMA. So Jennifer Gonzalez, the congresswoman from Puerto Rico, and I worked together to do the hearing. This was several months after the hurricane hit, but we were still in the need to get more power on and things. And so we went through that, and we did hold their feet to the fire. So I was willing to do that, and that's with the president of my own party, and I was happy to do that.
But let's be realistic. A subcommittee hearing on the issue of FEMA does not have the same weight that, something that would have been appointed by the Speaker of the House. I mean, again, the reason why I waited to bring this up until Representative Nunez was here, in response to Hurricane Irma, House Speaker Richard Corcoran created a bipartisan commission, appointed Jeanette Nunez to be the chair of that. I think you had 20 hours of hearings over 3 months. I think you produced a 118-page report with 78 very specific recommendations for the legislature to act on. That seemed like a serious effort to try to address a crisis, not a subcommittee hearing in Congress. So I'm going to ask you again, should Congress have done more?
Well, I did all I could do. I mean, I think that's, so I obviously thought Congress should do more because I was working hand in hand with Jennifer Gonzalez. We were doing the hearing. We were all over the agencies. And look, at the end of the day, I mean, you had a very serious storm hitting a very vulnerable island. The response was more difficult because it's an island commonwealth. It's not like you're bringing in power trucks from Alabama to Florida. So there were some serious logistical challenges. And then there were obviously a lot of problems with how the locals were internalizing that assistance and getting that out to the folks. But I've been very forward-looking on it. I would be happy to do more. If Congress wants to do more, I think that would be a good thing.
I want to ask you both the same question, but I want to start with you, Representative Nunez. Do you believe Andrew Gillum is a socialist?
Yes, I do. If you look at his policy, you look at his platform, you look at who he aligns himself with, absolutely. And as a daughter of immigrants and somebody that has seen firsthand the evils of socialism, it's offensive.
Well, but in South Florida, and I'll get your response to it in a second, but I mean, you particularly know that the term socialist in South Florida, it has a very, very heavy connotation to it. It's not, there's European socialism, there's different forms of socialism, but to throw the title socialist here in South Florida, are you likening him? Do you believe that he's the same as a Hugo Chavez or Nicolas Maduro?
Well, I think the platform speaks for itself, and so if it walks like a socialist and it talks like a socialist, then in the end of the day, it is a socialist.
So, but do you equate them with do you equate him with what we see in Venezuela?
Well, certainly, I think that we need to focus on the issues, and whether he is a Hugo Chavez or a Maduro. I mean, that's not the point. The point is his platform and what it means for Floridians. We've stood strongly with the people of Venezuela. We've stood strongly with the people of Nicaragua, and we want to make sure that that doesn't come close to being here in Florida.
Do you believe he's a socialist?
He's aligned himself. I mean, who was the biggest supporter he had in the primary? Bernie Sanders. Bernie's not a Democrat. Bernie says he's a socialist. Ocasio-Cortez, Democratic socialist. So he's embraced that. It's not that you're just throwing a label on it. That's where he has decided to go. And I think if you look at his platform, big tax increases, obviously would like to take over people's health care, move them off private, force them on a government plan. You look at some of the, the wage controls, things like that. Those have been tried in other states, have not worked out. And obviously we see in Venezuela there's been huge problems with it. So I think that his policies would be destructive for Florida.
You at the event in Little Havana, you talked about this. What was the phrase in Spanish that you...
Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres.
And what does that translate to?
Basically, tell me who you align yourself with and I'll tell you who you are.
Tell me who you walk with, I'll tell you who you are. That's a dangerous standard to use, especially given some of the issues that your campaign has had, is it?
Yeah, but it's so much different to be getting a major endorsement and saying that that's who you're aligning yourself with. What they're trying to do to me is saying, oh, well, this guy once knew Ron DeSantis, and then 2 years later he tweets something offensive on Twitter. That's just warmed over McCarthyism. Anyone that endorsed me or whose endorsement I sought, I think that's absolutely fair game, and I can argue from either side, but I mean, there's just apples and oranges here.
Well, I mean, you're having a fundraiser today with Jeb Bush as hosting it. One of the co-hosts was Ralph Arza.
He was never a co-host. See, this is why we get so much.
It was wasn't it on the flyer?
It was not. So there was not the invitation had not been approved by my campaign. People were submitting names from around South Florida about who could potentially do it. They were in the process of circulating it. I don't even know who Ralph Arza is. It didn't pass vetting, but someone in the press got ahead of it and said this was the invitation. It wasn't. It had not been approved yet.
But you see what I'm saying. In other words, you have that. You have Allen Beck.
We have we were going. That's why we vetted it, and that's why it would not have ended up being finalized that way. But there's a whole host of difference between saying somebody who may give money and then says something offensive versus adopting somebody's platform and endorsing certain policies. I mean, that's what Andrew Gillum is doing. So it's totally apples and oranges. We can go search all of Andrew Gillum's supporters' social media accounts, and you know what? We will find vile and obscene stuff because that's what it is. The stuff that I get about me, my wife, my kids from the left is revolting. That's why I don't do social media. So if we want to play that game, we can do it. But that doesn't really tell us anything. Anyone that's endorsing me or whose policies I'm endorsing, totally fair game. So it's much different.
Let me phrase it this way, and I don't want to belabor it, but I just want to, because it seems to me it's an interesting moment that we've got here, which is that you come from a background in a congressional district where you lived in a world that was conservative, and there wasn't going to be a lot of blowback to some of the things, whether you attended a particular conference, even if the other speakers may have said something that were offensive. If it was a conference.
There was nothing wrong. It was a conference that's been going on for 20 years at the Breakers. It's had presidential candidates, senators, congressmen. The conference that they were trying to say, it was not racial at all. But the conference they tried to say, that was keynoted by a Medal of Honor recipient, Clint Romeshay. So it's a false characterization, and it's not true.
Here's what the point I was trying to make is that when those things occurred, there was no blowback to you at the time. Nobody raised it. It's only now. So it's a matter of going from the confines. Well, the confines.
I had been running for the Senate at the time in 2016. I had gotten into the governor's race in beginning of 2018. My speech at the thing is on the dang internet. People can watch it. There's no one has been able to identify anything I actually did. It's like, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Let's try to find somebody who may have attended this. And the thing is, too, is the reason why a guy like me goes and speaks at these political conferences, and I've done almost every one in the conservative sphere, is because you go, you speak, you meet with donors, and you build political support. And the folks who were there in the crowd, these are good philanthropic people. They're diverse in terms of their religion and different things. And so it's just a lie to characterize it the way the left is doing it. And you guys in the press, why don't you go interview some of the people who were there? Why don't you interview Clint Romeshay, who spoke there, and ask him if he was doing that because there was any type of race? There was no race. There have been big-time African-American conservatives that have spoken at this thing.
The question I was trying to get to was, is this part of the challenge of going from competing in a world that is largely conservative, Fox News driven, to now trying to become a general election candidate running in a statewide race?
It's not that as much as it's a more important race than my congressional race was, and you're just we have a politics that is very demagogic, and that's basically what they're trying to do. Now think about it. Like, I don't have to. I mean, Gillum, I can go through his associations. I don't have to do that because I can identify the problems with his record, his vision, and his lack of leadership. For me, all they're trying to do is slime me with what other people do. Why don't you focus on my policies? Why don't you focus on my leadership? Why don't you focus on the fact that when Andrew Gillum was on the Tallahassee Commission voting himself additional benefits, I raised my hand to go serve this country in Iraq? Why don't we have that debate rather than try to play this 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon? I see this guy said something on Twitter one time. I don't care about any of that. I want to focus on Florida, and I want to focus on who's the best leader.
We are hoping to have Andrew Gillum here, possibly as early as next week, to hear his thoughts on the race and his plans for the state. And as you heard at the top of the show, I have proposed a debate between DeSantis and Gillum right here in our studio that would be broadcast across the state, and we would focus on issues affecting Florida. Ron DeSantis has accepted. Andrew Gillum is still considering it. We'll be right back.